Hi, Karen Lockculp here with the We Turned Out Okay podcast and WeTurnedOutOK.com. And I wasn't planning on making this video today. I actually was planning on doing something about this next week, and I will, or maybe 2 weeks. But we need to talk about guns now. It's 2 days after the latest massacre in Las Vegas, and it's it's something that I really wish I didn't have to talk about, and here I am. Because as horrible and horrifying as it has been to learn about this latest shooting, and to you almost can't look away, right? It's so compellingly awful that people keep getting guns and doing this. And this was especially egregious because it was so many people, but also it was a country music festival. It really, in some ways, it's been reminding me of the Boston Marathon bombing, which is just a place for families. It's a place for people to challenge themselves, and it's a day of celebration and joy. And I'm sure that that's what this country music festival was intended to be. And I just feel such anger and sadness, as I'm sure you do, that this has happened. And so that was my first reaction. Just just disbelief. I mean, sort of disbelief, I guess. It keeps happening, so how can you keep disbelieving it, right? But then my second thought was about you. My kids are older, so I don't have the same kind of worries as you do walking into a Dunkin' Donuts or a convenience store or a pizza place or your doctor's office or something like that, where there are just TVs blaring out the latest and the worst and the most awful. And my kids are older, as I said, and I still don't like. I mean, I don't like it for myself, but I also don't like when we go into a place like that and see just the repeated footage. Like, they'll just be showing whatever they can, and the ticker tape will say, 500 dead, or 58 dead and 500 injured, and that kind of thing. And we hear the tense voices when that are being broadcast over as people share the news, as people report on the news. And oftentimes there's images of the weapons used. It's tough on us adults. It's incredibly tough on little kids when we take them into places where we have to go. We're not going to not go to Dunkin' Donuts or a doctor's office or a hospital, for example, because we have to go to those places. And little kids don't. I think even young kids, maybe under 7, they don't even really understand the concept of death. They don't have this. They don't look at life the same way that we do. They don't developmentally have the same abilities that we do. And when we take them into these places, or if we're watching it on TV, or if they happen to catch something on the radio, I mean, it's all over the place, right? What they understand is the vibe of, like, fear and worry and upset. They may not understand why, but they're hearing it, and they're seeing, because it's all about guns, so they're seeing that. And today I wanted to get in here and say to you that if you're thinking about, like, a way forward with your kids, forgetting about setting aside the how do we stop this from happening again problem, which is, it's a problem, it does have a solution, we have to somehow find the solution. When I think about the problem of living our lives, going out into the world and being in society, what that means for our kids is that they are inevitably going to be exposed to TVs or to this news, somehow. And that's even setting aside, like, when we watch entertainment that has, PG movies are full of gigantic weapons and explosions and all that kind of stuff. Kids sometimes see that, and, like, we can't help it anymore. And that's a part of life. That right now is a part of life. I personally think it's a part of life that we could change as a society if we wanted to, but at the moment we don't seem to want to. So that leaves us parents, especially parents of young children, trying to figure out, how do I limit my child's exposure to this? If I can't limit my child's exposure to this, what do I do about it? And what I'm here to ask you to do is, may seem counterintuitive to you, and I want you to just kind of try and have faith in me, I guess. And that is, don't not talk to them about guns. If they see something like this, you may think, oh, okay, they just saw a little bit, it wasn't a big deal, like I won't mention this. And I'm not saying that you need to give them details or anything like that. In fact, what I would suggest that you do is ask questions. Like, you get back in the car and you say something like, wow, did you see that report on the news? And if they say yes, then ask them something about it. Ask them what they thought of it. Ask them what they saw or heard. And from the way that they're talking, perhaps you can understand how they're feeling, and then say, do you have any questions about that? Those looked scary to me. Do you have any questions about them? Like about what was being said or what happened? To keep news from kids who know a little bit, who have kind of a hint about it, that is like the worst thing we can do. They won't stop thinking about it. They'll keep thinking about it. So it's up to us to take the initiative and start a conversation in which we just ask questions. We ask them a question. So that's the first part of this. I want you to consider, if you think that they've been exposed in some way, even if it hurts you to do, and I understand that it might, to be able to pull from within yourself and say, okay, what are your questions? What are your thoughts? Because you can bet that if they have a little bit of news, they're going to be worrying. And I think about, so when my kids were young, I believe it was the University of Virginia massacre happened, and that got talked about at school. And so my son came home from school one day, and his questions were all about, like, what about us? Are we safe? He was worried about being safe at school, and he was worried about being safe at home. And what I did was I tried to ask questions. So I would say to him, like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like, what would you do? What would you do if a bad person came to our home? And because he was really worried about that. He was worried about, like, what would we do? What would happen? And he was telling me that he would, he had envisioned, like, this is a very young child's mind, so he's 5, maybe something like that, and he's saying, well, if he was going to set fire to the house, I would open the door and blow out his match, was what he said. I mean, it was just heartbreakingly adorable. And I said, good for you. That is great. That's a great idea. Because the likelihood of something like this happening, and happening in the way that we envision it, or that he was envisioning it, is, I mean, very, very, very slim. But for me to say, absolutely, you go with that, that's making him feel powerful. I mean, if somebody was trying to set fire to our house, he couldn't save it, right? But I can't tell that to him. I can't say to him, give up now. Instead, what I tried to do was to, talk about calling 911. We talked about that a lot when the kids were small. And then to also say, like, what would you do about this? And find out. I mean, so I want to kind of shift from, like, a general, if you've got this concern, to if you have a gun kid, a kid who's a gun enthusiast. I'm, for lack of a better term, even if they're girls, I'm calling them gun guys. I'm an archery guy, I guess I would say. I was an archery counselor in school, not in school, in college. I was a camp counselor, and I taught archery. I didn't swim, so I couldn't have anything to do with the, like, lake activities. So I, became the archery instructor, and I loved it. And I am such an archery enthusiast. I'm an archery guy. So when I gave birth to a gun guy, I understood that a little bit. And I mean, when he was small, when the Boston Marathon bombing happened, actually, he was 8. And he felt such a need to protect us that he built barricades all around the house, military barricades made of, like, overturned boxes and, like, swimming pool towels and sheets and stuff like that, just these piles and piles of things. And then he patrolled with a Nerf gun. Actually, I think it was more than one Nerf gun. He had like loaded them onto his back and stuff like that. And I kept tripping over them. I was like, dude, this has to stop. We got to take these things down. This is crazy pants. And although I didn't know the word crazy pants then, but anyway, I was like, this is nuts. We can't have this. Please take them down. And he started crying. And he said, I wouldn't, there is nothing, he said, there is nothing I wouldn't do to protect you and Daddy and my brother. And I was like, wow, okay. I mean, I can't prevent you from doing this in that case. Like, keep them up. They're yours. Because he was playing through the emotions and the fears that he had about, learning about this bombing. And that was making him feel safe, and it was making him feel like a protector. And I mean, it wasn't doing me, other than like landing on my face, it wasn't doing me any harm to let him have those. So those barricades stayed up for days. Because if you remember, you may not remember this, but we also had this shelter in place order after there was this tremendous manhunt while they were searching for the bombers, and it was just terrifying. And to have a child who could say, like, this is what I can do about this, I mean, that I couldn't take that away from him. So so if you have a gun guy who, for example, likes to draw, I don't know, scenes with like action scenes or something like that, or likes to play shootout, or my mother talks about one of my brothers apparently used to chew his toast into a gun shape so that he could then like point it at things. And we can't, again, I would ask you to talk to this child, and instead of banning the idea of weapons or whatever, to talk to the child and find out, like, what is it that they like about guns. And I bet one of the things they like about them is the feeling of power that comes with imagining yourself holding a gun. When you're a really little kid, that kind of power doesn't come frequently. So that might be a thing as well. And anything we can do to help them feel powerful, teaching them to respect guns. I mean, like, one of the things that we try to do is to show our kids how, if you ever come across a gun, you need to really, really respect it. And what we hoped would happen is that they would see us talking about and thinking this through and respecting the guns and even fearing them, because I mean, in some ways we do, and I've actually been researching a little bit about this. There was a study done in the early 2000s that was showing, what they tried to do was to find out, like, does any firearm safety training help young kids avoid guns? And the woman's name was, she's a psychologist, her name is Maria Sanfilippo, and what she discovered is that it does not. So they put ages 4 to 7 kids through a gun safety training. If you see a gun, what do? You don't touch it. You tell an adult, that kind of thing. And then they put an unloaded semi-automatic weapon in a room with a bunch of kids playing. And the kids who had the training, it made no difference in terms of whether they picked up that gun or not, or went to it and played with it. It didn't make any difference at all. So, I mean, that's something to think about. Like, kids are so drawn to these weapons, and I think maybe it's because it's a powerful thing. And to a powerless person, the powerful thing is pretty exciting. So for whatever reason, if you have a gun guy, think about doing the same things, talking to your gun guy, playing through with your gun guy, or like with your kids. So Ben used to put on a cape, and the kids would put on capes, and they would run around together getting bad guys. And I mean, I struggled with it at first because I am not a big, huge gun enthusiast, but the play and I'm watching them play something through and be heroes with their dad is what they were taking from that. So, I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I really want to thank you for watching, and I really hope it helps. I'm going to do an episode of the podcast about this, but it won't be up for a week or so. And when it comes up, I will link to it below this video, so you'll be able to have both those resources. And in the meantime, I am wishing you very well, and hoping that you'll contact me with questions, and that this helps you kind of feel, better in your parenting. I mean, we can't always feel better about the things, that are happening in our world right now, but we can feel better in our parenting, and we can, give our kids lots of hugs and feel grateful that we have them. So for that's it for now. I'm Karen Lockhope, and I will be in here with another video sometime soon. All right, bye.